Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Fireside chat. Today my name is Ozofo Gemudia. I'm the Vice Chair of the SBL. Today we have a very distinguished guest, one of the former chairs of the SBL, Mr. Seni Adio, SAN. Welcome, Silk, and thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, Ozofo. Good to be here.
Okay, so I'm just checking with Endurance and Rex that we can go ahead.
Yes, please.
My Vice Chair, we are good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Endurance. Before
Endurance is still as effusive as ever.
Oh,
Nothing has changed.
So before
Thank you, boss.
before we go further into this chat, I wanted to invite our participants to feel free to post questions in the chat box while the chat is going on, because I would like to pick up your questions and see if we can go through as many of them as possible in the limited time we have. So I don't want you to wait till the end because we might run out of time. But we'll start with the question.
How much time do we have?
Endurance, how much time do we have? 1 hour plus what? What's our spillover?
We have 1 hour, and because it's a high-profile engagement, probably we just give 15 more minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So maximum of 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I'll start with the questions I have, and then as we get more questions in the chat, I will take those so that I don't hog the Silk's entire hour and a quarter. So starting with maybe a few personal questions so we get to know you better. The first question I have is, who is Seni Adio, SAN? What are your core personal values that you embraced and which you believe have contributed to your growth as a lawyer, sir?
Thank you, Ozofo. Wow, that's an interesting question. Well, I have to try to not to be modest. Well, obviously I'm a legal practitioner, second generation. Both my parents were in the legal profession. My dad, a former chief judge of Oyo State. My mom also was a presiding judge of the Ogun State High Court. I'm a proud alumnus of Igbobi College, Upper IC. I've practiced for approximately going on 34 years, thereabout, in multiple jurisdictions, primarily in the US and here in Nigeria. And yeah, that's who Seni Adio is. As far as my practice in terms of how I started or what I see as the sort of the qualities that one would require to be successful. There's some things that we ought to take for granted, but in this environment it tends to come up a lot. So to be peculiar, so to speak, in terms of our environment, I think it all starts with your foundation, that integrity should be taken for granted. That should be something that we shouldn't even be talking about. And of course, hard work is the next thing. Hard work, being dependable, being loyal. I think having a high level of loyalty to your colleagues, to your profession, even to your clients. Yeah, there are boundaries, but your clients too, and there are boundaries, I repeat that. And also, being open to, as you get more senior, being open to mentoring others. So I think mentorship is also very, very important. So that's what I would say for the time being in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very great way to start. And you mentioned your practice across jurisdictions, particularly in the US and in Nigeria. So maybe I'll just let's look into that a bit more. It seems like you have had the sort of career that only that many lawyers only dream of, which is practicing both in Nigeria and in another developed foreign jurisdiction. And I don't think you can, the US is right on the top there when you look at other jurisdictions. So for those who don't know, Mr. Seni Adio, SAN, was a partner at the US firm of Mintz Levin. And then he came back to Nigeria and founded Copley Partners. So we want to understand what you would ascribe as maybe the factors for your success. How were you able to reach partnership level, both in the US, and then come here, start your firm from scratch, and then rise to where you are today? So what's really the formula for your success? And I ask this bearing in mind that many young lawyers today have left Nigeria, gone jackpot, if we may, to other jurisdictions like the US, the UK, Canada. And for some of them, that might be their exit from the profession. But for others that have the love of the profession at heart, they may be seeking to succeed in those jurisdictions, but which you've done. So while you're exploring how you succeeded, maybe any words of advice for those who are starting out in these other foreign jurisdictions? How do they scale the ladder? What do they need to do?
Okay. Again, to be peculiar about our environment, in Nigeria, we say everything is by the grace of God. So, yeah, it's always by the grace of God. But seriously speaking, I think what one needs to have, you need to have a certain level of clarity. Clarity of mind, clarity of purpose. Because if you don't, it'll be easy for you to waver and to perhaps have your head turned in different directions. And while that is happening to you, a lot of time is passing, and you may ultimately not end up quite achieving your goal, so to speak. So if I were to personalize it for me, for example, when I was going to go to the States, my dad, especially, he was not in favor of my going. He was completely opposed to my going. For many reasons, many of them I didn't even know at the time. And they were, I guess, out of concern for me, because his thinking was, I'd gone to school abroad. I was back, done law school, youth corps. And as a legal practitioner himself, he assumed or expected, more like it, that I would just start, join a law firm and then, begin my career. And he, being a former litigator, certainly wanted me to go into, dispute resolution and be in the courtroom. And so when I said I was going to do a master's, or I wanted to do a master's, his response was, well, do you want to teach? And I said, no. So then, hey, get into the courtroom. And I wasn't, that wasn't what I had in mind. So long story short, he wasn't in favor, but I found my way to the US. And it wasn't easy at all. But I was prepared to give it whatever it took, So I had friends that I met there, colleagues, when I was doing my master's, both, Americans and a lot of foreign trained law graduates. And there's so many things going on, and some of them saying, if you think, we can make it here. At that time, especially, there was so much going on that did not project Nigeria, let's put it that way, in a favorable light. A lot of things that are still happening somewhat now were very prevalent at that time. So from having a funny name, Seni Adio, to being of, melanin, my skin color, being in Nigeria at the time was not quite attractive. There's so many, obstacles, so to speak. But I was determined to turn some of those into stepping stones or escalators or what have you. So I was determined that if I didn't achieve my goals, it wouldn't be for lack of trying. So I did my master's at Boston University. Even the course I got my master's in taxation was deliberate to give me an option to go into the corporate world. Even though I think I sort of knew litigation was where I was interested in, but I felt tax would make me more marketable, so to speak. So law firms would be interested in talking to me. Also, a lot of consulting firms would also be interested, because of my tax background. So it was a strategy to do that, and ultimately I interviewed at different firms. Ultimately joined Mintz Levin. I did project finance for about a year or so. Because the firm at that time allowed you to rotate in different departments, and ultimately went to litigation. My second year, ended up loving litigation, and I stayed in litigation. And as I say, the rest is history. But while in the firm as a young associate, I was always conscious of, and it wasn't easy. You are trying to be the best lawyer you can be in that environment. It's not easy at all. And you're also trying to put yourself in positions where you'll be noticed, and you'll be noticed for better or for worse, ultimately, hopefully for better. So I would volunteer for certain assignments, just to project myself and hopefully make the right impression, so to speak, So as a second year associate in the litigation department, I'll tell you a quick story. I was given an assignment by a partner in the employment section, and I did this. The memo was a research memo, and I sent it over to him. He read it. Apparently, he liked the memo, but because that was the first time he was encountering someone like me, lovely man, got to know him very well. We got very close much later, when I became a partner. We go out, to the pub together, to games, to watch a Red Sox or the New England Patriots. But coming back to what I'm trying to convey, he read my memo, and it turns out he was pleasantly surprised about my vocabulary and my, the writing style and the skills and the clarity in my writing. And he actually expressed it to someone, It got back to me, and I saw it as a compliment. I wasn't offended, So there's so many things you have to do, but you have to just have that clarity of purpose, clarity of mind, that this is where I want to end up. Just to backtrack a bit. Now, I also reached out to various people. I made myself able to be mentored. And there's one particular gentleman, I can't forget his name, John Hawkins. The first time I did a memo, and before I submitted the memo, I gave it to him to look over. And he sent it back to me through the inter-office mail, and it was all red ink all over the memo. And I was really upset, And I thought, what, I've read this thing, it looks good. I don't agree with this, and I'm just going to submit it. That was going through my mind. Somebody said, Seni, don't do that. Go out and see him. So I went to see him. He explained certain things to me. I rewrote the memo. And since then, I haven't looked back, so to speak. So I also made myself available to be mentored. I listened to, mentoring. And, but again, I was prepared to be resourceful. I was determined to succeed, that if I didn't succeed, it wouldn't be for lack of effort, So I'll stop there for now. But that was how my career started in the big firm, so to speak, which Mintz Levin is in AmLaw 100, top 100 law firm, in the US. Yeah.
Okay, before I move on, I want to understand, so having reached that level of partnership, what made you decide to come back and basically build a firm from the ground up, instead of staying to enjoy the fruit of all that hard work you just spoken about?
Well, when I went to the States, I didn't go there I went there to do a master's and come back. That was the plan, to do LLM and come back. I just got married at the time as well, but shortly after arriving in the States, I'm putting my stuff out there now, shortly after arriving in the States, maybe a couple of months, discovered we were expecting. So I had to put my master's on hold for like a year or so before I went to do it. And then in that period, my orientation changed from just doing the LLM and then coming back, to doing the LLM, working in a law firm, and trying to be the best lawyer I could be, so to speak. Just to digress a bit, even before my own year came up for partnership, I got a job to come back to Nigeria with another company as an expatriate, but ultimately I turned it down because I wanted to, two things. I wanted to prove to myself that I could make it to the top. And secondly, I wanted to put the feet of the leaders of that firm to the fire, so to speak, that, all things being equal, when my year comes up, will I be voted up or down? And fortunately, I was voted up. But as far as coming back to Nigeria, yes, the plan was not to stay for as long as I did initially. So the pull to come back never left. I wasn't an economic refugee. I wanted to come back and make a difference here. Like I said, both my parents were in the profession. My uncle, my dad's older brother, by that time, he had passed on, unfortunately, but he made it all the way to the Supreme Court. So there was the pull to come back, to give back. Unfortunately, before I came back to permanently, my mom had passed. So I have you can't have it both ways. I have some regrets. I wasn't around when my parents were reaching the top of their careers. My dad retired, I think, a year or two before I came back, finally as Chief Judge of Oyo State. So I wasn't here all the time. He too was peaking in his career. But the pull to come back to Nigeria never left. And I realized that, yes, I'd made partner. And then the question is, am I going to spend the rest of my very productive, if you will, years working my way through the partnership, or do I want to fulfill my dreams of coming back here and make a go of things? And I ultimately decided that, I really wanted to come back home, make a difference. And that's what I did. So when I went to see the lady who was a hiring partner when I was hired many years ago, who had now become the chairman of my section litigation, and I said, Betsy, I'm thinking about going back home. She was like, home? Seni, where do you mean home? He said, to Milton. I was in Milton, Massachusetts. I said, no, back to Nigeria. He said, Nigeria? Really? I said, yeah. And she was a very lovely lady. She was so nice to me. And there's a story, about that as well. But for now, when I said, I really was thinking about going back, and it took a lot for him to go up to her to say that. Ultimately, she said, okay, Shane, if that's what you decided, let us know how soon you want to do this and what have you. And if I stayed in her office for another 5 minutes, with both of us, not just me, but both of us would have both started crying, But I was determined to come back, and I don't have any regrets about coming back.
Okay, thank you.
So it was to come and give back and make a difference and, make a mark here in Nigeria as well, and from the vantage point of making a difference, not, monetarily or, egotistically, but just be here and do something in this environment. So that's what happened. And again, when I say clarity of purpose and mind, when I came back, they used to tell me there that, look, Shani, you can always come back anytime you want and this and that. And I had people telling me here, why the hell did you do that? Why did you leave your partnership and come to Nigeria? So again, if I didn't know what I was doing, or I wasn't determined or focused, I would have been distracted that, oh, maybe I should be going back and, but again, I knew what I wanted, so I stayed, and I'm glad I did.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, again, you've helped lead me into I guess the next phase of this interview, which is about making impact and some of the things you've done in that respect. So let me start with your time in the exco of the SBL. And certainly the first time I met you, you were the secretary of the SBL at the time. And I found out you were a litigator, which was quite puzzling for me because I didn't realize that the SBL could be a home for a litigator. And not just that, but that the litigator could go on to become the chair of the section. So I want to understand just how you got into the SBL, how you found a place for yourself, basically, because I think your association and what you've achieved with the SBL reinforces the fact that we must never put ourselves in a box. So maybe just start with that and then a few more questions on that. Thank you.
All right. So when so before I came back home finally, occasionally when I would come to visit, I still stayed very close to a lot of my friends, particularly those in the profession. So I would come. So I came a few times when the SBL was having its annual business conference. So, and I was impressed, very impressed, highly impressed that the conferences were organized as you would just about anywhere in the world. So in no particular order, that piqued my interest. I mean, George told me, Mr. Itomi was the chairman of the SBL at the time, founding chairman. So that piqued my interest. And again, in no particular order, or maybe in the order of how things evolved, let me put it that way. After I came back, I remember having a conversation with Mr. Yemi Kandi Johnson. At that time, there had been sort of an interregnum for about a year or so. The SBL was being reconstituted, the EXCO, the council, so to speak. And Mr. Kandi Johnson had been the pro tem chair for about a year or so, and he ultimately organized more like it, the council that was formed following that, 12-month or thereabout interregnum, and Mr. Everybody emerged as the chair, So, but yeah, going back to my conversation with Mr. Kandi Johnson, we're discussing, and I said, oh, by the way, that the SBL ought to have a committee on product liability and consumer protection. Yes, consumer protection principle. And so, oh, that's a great idea. That why don't you set up the committee? And I was like, I didn't think I would have the time. I'm busy. I'm a returnee. I'm trying to get myself settled and integrated. And then he said something to the effect of, well, if people like you are not interested in doing it, then who's going to do it? So I said, okay, I'll be happy to do that. So I set up that committee as the pioneer chair of that. What was then consumer protection and products liability. Products liability has been dropped now, just consumer protection. And then from there, I started getting more involved in SBL, so to speak. And I think during Mr. Ibode's chairmanship, I was asked to be a chair of a conference planning committee. And that must have been, I think, after Mr. Obade, I think, conference planning committee. I did that. And then after that, there was a change. And I think Mr. Asugudalo became chairman. And I was asked to become secretary, which meant I became secretary without even having served on council. So long story short, I've had a lot of broad shoulders to stand on, so to speak. So I was secretary where Mr. Godalo was chairman and Olu Akpata was vice chair. Olu became chair, I became vice. I know that, yes, even your question is quite apropos because I know that certainly it's only human. There would have been some thinking that, having a litigator be, chairman, never happened before, what have you. So all those gentlemen I knew sort of rooted for me, but Olu in particular, because, he was the vice and I was going to be his vice. Once he became chair, he was extremely supportive as well. So it happened that I became chair. And I remember the day I became vice chair. And I remember when I became chair, the inauguration was in Abuja at the International Conference Center. I actually overheard a reporter say, this man that just came back, how did he do it? Can he do the work? But like I said, one thing I said, every time I was asked to do something, and for the young lawyers especially, it's very, very important. Whoever asked me, I would say, on one condition. If I take it, you will support me. And every single one of those people that I've mentioned, from Mr. Itomi from Mr. Kandi Johnson to Mr. Itomi to Mr. Ibo, they asked me, all of them supported. Whenever I asked them to do something for me, they did it. So I really thank them for being able to succeed as chairman ultimately when I became chairman.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. So just maybe a quick one on what role do you think the SBL is playing and should play in the lives of lawyers today? What advice do you have for the current and future leadership of the association to ensure that we are fulfilling our, what we should be doing, but also attracting the sort of lawyers like you that may not ordinarily see SBL as having any role for them to play?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think, first of all, the SBL has been waxing stronger and stronger. And so what has happened as past officers and past chairmen have continued to support the section, so to speak. Dr. Adio is doing a fantastic job, So the SBL is in very, very good hands. I think for lawyers, again, particularly the young ones, even if you want to be, less altruistic about it and even mercenary about it, it will be your best interest to be not just a member, but an active member of the section. Because these days, you can't afford to be a generalist. You need to specialize, in certain areas of law. And the SBL provides a perfect platform in a very inexpensive way to acquire those skill sets through training and volunteering and mentorship, receiving mentorship from senior lawyers. So it certainly behooves young lawyers to be members and to be active members to participate. For the SBL as a section, to continue basically doing what it's been doing, being a force to be reckoned with in terms of law reform. I mean, you, Zofu, you are our, I'm looking for a baseball term, or maybe let me use a football term.
Thank you.
You are our quarterback, with respect to KAMA 2020. I'm looking at how that has transformed the legal landscape. Same thing with the Business Facilitation Act and so on and so forth. We had so many people that worked on this, so many law firms. But at the end of the day, it boils down to a few critical individuals, taking the bull by the horn, so to speak, And so SBL has been very remarkable in terms of its accomplishments in law reform, etc., etc. And that needs to continue engagement with those agencies and regulatory authorities that impact, what we do, whether it's the NIPC or the CAC, etc., all of that, and what the SBL needs to do is to remain dynamic, always at the cutting edge of legal practice. I have to admit, I haven't really kept up with this area as such, but in terms of AI, for example, I don't know what exactly we're doing about that, AI, space technology, so many areas. What are we doing about healthcare? Healthcare, most people think about healthcare as, particularly people who are, from my own vantage point, litigators. I don't share that view, but they think of healthcare practice as, malpractice. You're suing doctors or you're suing hospitals. But healthcare, you have M&A, you have licensing, you have employment, you have, so many different areas. You have real estate, in healthcare, So that's an area that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface in terms of lawyers providing services, to healthcare practitioners, So SBL just needs to remain dynamic and continue to push the frontier. I see that, for example, the other sections, they've come a long way. And when you are the one in front leading, the target, so they've come a long way. Even with all due respect, the national NBA is doing a lot of things now that are very impactful. Of course, the gentleman leading that, Tobena leading that, is a product of the member and the product of the SBL and so on and so forth. So the SBL needs to just remain dynamic and continue to proffer, cutting-edge solutions and opportunities for legal practitioners. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Before I go on, I'm going to, for the benefit of those who hadn't joined us at the beginning, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A tab, and I'll pick them up from there to make sure we cover them in the time we have. So I'll just move on. You mentioned that one of the drivers for coming back to Nigeria was to make impact. And in the course of your last statement, you'd referred to the KAMA So we, the first time I worked with you, it was for when the SBL was asked to assist in reviewing the Donny J report. That was where the journey to the KAMA 2020 started. And then there was NASBA, which was a collaboration between the NESG, the National Assembly, and the SBL, the National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable. And under the auspices of the NASBA, there was a lot of collaboration in relation to legislative drafting and regulatory reform. And then also you acted, while you were the chair of the SBL, you championed the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement while serving as on the Presidential Committee for its impact and readiness assessment. So from all those perspectives and all that experience you gained working on both local and international legislation, because the AFCFTA cuts across the continent. Tell us about your experience, in this field of legislative and regulatory reform, what the challenges tend to be, the biggest wins for you, and your outlook for the future, especially for the country, Nigeria, and the current government, and our competitive advantage across the continent and indeed the world.
Oh, that's a lot. Well, let me go back first to NASBA, and when I remember before NASBA was formed, SBL is a founding member of NASBA, and for the members of the audience, NASBA is National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable. And before that organization was founded, I remember having a discussion. Mr. Godalo was the chairman at the time. So he said, oh, Shani, that this, we're trying to see whether we can have a true collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. That's how we started, and particularly the legislative arm of the government, so we're trying to see how we could do that, and that, why don't you lead that initiative, I tell you what, maybe I even did it. I was this close to saying it was going to be a waste of time. But I was hopeful, but, like a lot of things a lot of fits and stops in the past. So I was not really, but, again, I said, okay, fine, let's, as they say, let's do this, so we started the work, and, they were very receptive. The members of the National Assembly were very receptive, both the House and the Senate. And I also happened to have access to some of the folks there, at the time, if I recall correctly. I think the current chief of staff now, Right Honorable Femi Dadamila, was the minority leader, if I remember at the time. At that time, he wasn't speaker yet. I think it was the minority leader majority leader, not minority, it was majority leader in the House. So that helped, but we were very tenacious, very resourceful. We worked hand in glove with a development agency, DFID, Department of Funding for International Development, a UK development agency, together with the National Assembly, both the House and the Senate here. And ultimately, based on that collaboration, and NESG, Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And through that collaboration, it became apparent that we need to formalize the relationship, and it was formalized, and that's how NASBA was formed, and to the point where a liaison office was actually established, National Assembly for the outfit. And it was through that platform that some of these legislative initiatives, KAMA, 2020, the Business Facilitation Act, and other legislations that SBL was involved in were pushed through the National Assembly. So for that, we need to commend the National Assembly. I think it was the 8th and 9th, or 7th, 8th, and 9th, but certainly the 8th was the pivotal assembly at the time, in working collaboratively with us, and other stakeholders to get the work done. So again, SBL, kudos to SBL that were able to do what had been done. That was the first in the past. and that collaboration has continued until now. The challenges, that challenges were mostly logistics. The members work with us, with all sense of humility. One thing we knew at the front end was our jobs would be a lot easier if we were willing to let members of the National Assembly take full credit for the work. So when you ask about challenges, and you're smiling with those because you know that's what we did. Yes. So we said, look, it doesn't matter. You take credit, we'll do the work. You take the credit. So it worked well. On the international arena, the AFCFTA, God rest his soul, Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, that was Nigeria's chief negotiator for the AFCFTA and our inaugural Director General for the National Office of Trade Negotiations. He was just brilliant, was superb, both in terms of his intellect and also he had a way with people. I'm getting goosebumps even talking about him and how he related, so he basically, again, he was one person that all the member states, trusted and ultimately relied on to be the one to craft and what ultimately was adopted and as the agreement, and then various countries signed onto the agreement. Unfortunately, Nigeria ought to have been one of the first to sign, maybe the first even, but for all kinds of reasons that didn't happen. Ultimately, we signed, I think, many months after even the Federal Executive Council had approved signing. The government at the time, perhaps rightly so, to be fair, because there was some opposition from some stakeholders, the business community, about dumping and things like that. So there had to be a lot of stakeholder engagement across the country, and ultimately, so that was how that committee on readiness for implementation was set up, which I was part of, and ultimately we did a paper and were able to convince the federal government to sign and implement. So that's that. Ambassador Osakwe really led that charge, and may his soul continue to rest in peace.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. So, having burdened you with such a pregnant and heavy question, let's move to a lighter note. So I think anyone that knows you knows that you are quite easygoing, easy to talk to, and a man that clearly knows how to let his hair down. And this, contrasts in a way with, first of all, someone that's so driven, focused, and able to achieve so many goals, as is evident from your career to date. And also the 24/7 work lifestyle that many lawyers tend to adopt in order to succeed. Many believe, you need to throw yourself into your work and do nothing else, really, in order for you to achieve, to become a partner or to become GC or, achieve the height of your career. So I was wondering if you have any advice for lawyers coming up behind you and listening to us today on how to navigate this profession, succeed in it, but have a life outside of the office and outside of work, especially in today where we are more conscious about, wholeness and well-being and mental health and all those things. So how do you think we can strike a balance and succeed on both fronts?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's not easy, but as far as what to do, can be somewhat personal. What it is you find enjoyable and what have you. But yes, it's very important to have a work-life balance. So, for me, I find that exercising helps me to decompress. So I like to, I used to go to the gym a lot. I haven't done since COVID, but I still run. I like running. So when I'm running is when I do my thinking, I decompress. I've seen many people say, Shane, we saw you on the bridge.
I've seen you on the bridge.
So that helps me a lot. But that didn't come, okay, so let me get that story. So that didn't come from, it helps me, but there's a story behind even my doing a lot of long distance running. So my first year as an associate at Means Levin, you know, we had lawyers from different parts of the country, from different offices, you know. But when you start as a first year, they bring all of us to the Boston office. You know, so it could be maybe you're in the London office or in California or DC, wherever it is, you come to the Boston office, you get to know each other for maybe a week or so, and then people disperse. And there was a colleague of mine who played very high level basketball in college. You know, then we had a few other people who were also fairly good athletes. You know, so they said, "Oh, Seni, that you know, we should." And the firm was very big on supporting, doing CSR, so to speak. So they said we should raise money for the American Liver Foundation. And I was thinking, and I was in my 20s, Liver Foundation. It was my own with Liver Foundation, what have you. But at the same time, I was saying, and they were going to go to the Boston Marathon. I'd never run a marathon before. So, of course, again, always volunteering. I was like, okay, sure, let's do it. And after I said, let's do it, I was like, what the hell have I signed myself up? You know, but again, you know, I got into it, trained. So I did 2 Boston marathons, you know, and I've done so many mini. But again, it was also trying to find positive and constructive ways to engage and interact and integrate. So another thing I was going to say, for those people who are thinking of going abroad or who are already abroad, you know, find a way as much as possible to integrate, you know, develop relationships and what have you. People like to do business with who they know and who they like. And God forbid, if something goes wrong, the senior associate or the partner is more likely to support and defend and protect who they know and who they like, because things can go wrong and you'll be able to survive whatever it is. So, but for me, you know, exercising, I still stay in touch with a lot of my, you know, childhood friends, you know, so I like to do things to relax. I don't need an excuse to have a good time. I'm sure some of you know that, you know, it helps, you know, but you have to find a way that you do in such a way that your family does not suffer. That's the hardest part, particularly once you are married and you have children. So in my case, for example, you know, there's no shame in it. It took a bit of a toll, I'm sure. You know, if I think about it on my family, because, you know, I remember before I came back, maybe like 3 years before, I was on a trial that lasted for many months. You know, the trial involved a company called AstraZeneca. And there were days when I would leave in the morning and I would get home at like 3 in the morning, sleep for 2 hours, shower, and then go back to work. Of course, I was younger then. You know, and it's not uncommon to have spent 1 or 2 nights in the office even. So that, yeah, it can take a toll, but again, you're keeping your eyes on the ball. And then when you have downtime, you try to make it up to your friends, your family, your network. So my firm also, we used to have a lot of attorney outings. We called it attorney outings. You play basketball, you play softball, you go to the golf course. If you're not a golfer, you can just go to the range and hit ball, but you do things socially. You know, so you just find a way to do things that you like when you have the time. It's good for your mental health. That you make sure you find a way to do that. And even SBL, you know, we have events from time to time, maybe dinners or lunches, and of course we have an annual business conference where we have a good time. But the key is you have to try to find the balance. You know, you have to be deliberate about, you know, finding a balance. It's very, very important.
Thank you so much, Silk. I'm going to go to our Q&A. We have a few questions. So Olukemi Shomoye asked this question. Thank you, Leonard Silk, for the enlightening session. What is your advice to startups or budding law firms?
My advice is you have to, you know, it might sound a little cliche, but you have to, as much as possible, have some clarity about what kind of a firm are you founding. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's, you know, you're starting out with just by yourself or with 3 or 4 partners and you're bringing on juniors, you know, because if you're starting by yourself, it might be a slightly different consideration than if you're starting with 4 or 5 other people. And again, if you're starting with 4 or 5 other people, it might be a slightly different consideration if those are people that are also still fairly young in their practice or a bit more experienced, so to speak. But at the end of the day, one commonality, one thread that should run through always is what kind of a firm are you trying to establish? And then, you always have to keep in mind that whether small, big, or large, or whatever it is, the quality of the work that comes out of your firm, because you only have one chance to make an impression, So, you have to have some clarity about that. You want to have a firm that cannot be a firm, that you do everything for everyone. Are you going to be more dispute resolution centric or business law centric? And then you have to be true to the skill sets that you have at the time you're founding the firm, and then these days, it's important that, make sure you have some kind of financial resource that you can tap into so that you can start that firm, with a certain level of tools in terms of technology for your research, for communicating internally and externally, for power, alternative power solutions and things like that. And then have the right, nothing extravagant, but just have a certain level of an ambience, so to speak, But at the end of the day, you're going to be judged by the quality of the work that you do, So that should be your number one focus, And of course, it would help if at the time you're starting out, you have, again, like you have capital that you do that for the next perhaps 6 months. You have enough to sustain you, pending when your fee notes go out and start having some revenue. So those are the kind of things that come to mind. I mean, for me, I can, having worked in a very, very large firm of, several hundreds of lawyers, and where everything was, all I had to do was just do my law, just focus. Everything else was taken care of, every single thing. Everything you can think it, everything was taken care of. There was staff for everything. We had staff for even the marketing, the technology, your HR, your everything was taken care of. If there's something wrong with your system, you just pick up the phone, somebody comes and replaces it. Everything was done. Training was scheduled. Everything was just done. To founding this firm. Okay, another thing, I was deliberate about the name of the firm. I did not want Seni Adio and Co. for certain reasons. I wanted the firm that, all things being equal, people can come in, and if things work out, they can also become part of the owners of the business. So that was deliberate. I didn't want to say Adio and Adio, or Adio and Co, or Seni Adio and Co. Yes, there was a moment of nostalgia at that period. So the name Copley came from a place in Boston, a place called Copley Place, where you have a convergence of law firms, insurance firms, very sort of high-end business district, if you will. So so beyond that, I wanted a firm that people can come and succeed and can become owners of the business. So again, that is something you want to think about, that, we want to take a generic name, and it just be a few letters you're coupling together, or something else that conjures something amongst those of you that want to set up the firm. That just something like a question that I should add as well.
Thank you, Silk. I'm sure that was very helpful to the audience. The second question that's here, I think someone missed what you'd said about the medical profession and how that creates various avenues for lawyers and opportunities that we're not fully harnessing. So the question was, I would love the learned speaker to speak more on medical law, as I had issues with my signal when he was making his submission, and I'm interested in that area.
Okay, yes. So what I said was that when I was speaking of areas that we still need to explore here. I mentioned AI and things like that, but I said it was something that is not, in my view, as radical or as new, has always been with us, as AI, which is healthcare, that we haven't even scratched the surface, so to speak, that most people, when they think of healthcare law or health law, oftentimes think of something having gone wrong, having to sue a hospital or a doctor or both. However, I said healthcare law includes, opportunities for mergers and acquisition work, advisory work, regulatory work, because, sometimes, to the hospitals need to go through various certifications and things like that. They need legal advice on that. And there's employment law work, there's real estate work. They acquire assets, they acquire property. There's intellectual property work, so there's a lot, that is available in that space, that we need to explore and develop, is what I was saying.
Thank you so much. Okay. Any more questions? Please feel free to put it in the Q&A tab because we are almost out of time. But let me go to the few that I have left. Again, keeping it light. So Silk, with all your career achievements, are there still mountains that lie ahead of you to conquer? Or have you achieved it all? What next lies ahead for you? What should we be looking out for?
Wow. There's always a lot more to do. I think now, my focus is more towards, just being someone that, I'm able to impact at least my immediate environment in a positive way. But I'm not looking for titles or anything like that, being deliberate. At least I try to. We talked about that a little bit before. Being deliberate about, I want to hopefully be around for a long time, so being deliberate about taking care of my health, and be around for my children and grandchildren, but for me, for now, I think I'm more at the point where I'm, I make myself available to mentor, to encourage, and when people say to me, "Oh, that was so kind of you," and I say to them that, look, what I hope is that you, when the time comes, you do the same likewise. You reach out, you reach back, you help. And I always say that, there may be a few exceptions, but for the most part, if anyone says, "Oh, I did it my way and I did it by myself," I don't know. I think there might be a few people, but I think for most of us, at some point, somebody gave you a helping hand, So for me, I just want to be someone that can, that's available, that can help. And even outside the legal profession, I'm someone I'm hoping that there are opportunities for me to be of service, so to speak, so that's more like it, but I think I'm happy, with where I am, and we can't all be, I don't know.
Should we be looking out for you on the bench? In the following your parents' footsteps?
That window that's
remains open
for many reasons. I tell you what, again, I like telling stories, right? So the work, put aside everything you read on social media about the judiciary and this and that, that aside, the work that our judges do, is very hard work. Very, very hard work in very, very, very tough conditions. And don't forget, most of us, particularly those of us who practice in the commercial space, you just see the judges in federal high courts in Lagos High Court. Okay, you go to Port Harcourt, you go to Abuja, predominantly, but there are judges all over Nigeria working under very, very dangerous, very stressful, inadequate conditions for very meager, resources, financial and otherwise. It's hard. So for all kinds of reasons, it's not the space that, I think, again, one thing I always tell myself, and I tell people that when things are happening, that you saw, so for example, if you come to me now, Seni, I say, Mr. Adio, Seni, you are the best thing since whatever. And I know I'm not, because I'm very true to myself. I will smile. the way endurance does, and it's always healing me. And I know I'm not that, I'm not that great. I smile, but you also have to keep your feet on the ground.
Mhm.
Americans say that the moment you start believing your hype, you're on your way down.
Yeah.
You are great, sir.
So you always have to keep your feet on the ground. So hey, coming back to the issue you raised. So I did my youth corps in Jos, right? I did my youth corps in Jos. I did my orientation in a place called Pangshin, very cold place. Lovely but cold. The day I got to Jos town, I was staying with my uncle, my dad's older brother. He called me and said, Seni, my steward knows I don't take visitors. Nobody comes here to look for me. I don't take visitors, and nobody leaves any messages for me. Understood? I said, yes, sir. Now, this is a man that later on I discovered, again, just through getting older, that he wasn't as old as I thought he was in terms of, the age gap between himself and my dad. But my dad revered him like his father. And there's a story behind that as well. But anyway, he said, I don't take messages and nobody comes here. I said, yes, sir. So I've told this to a few of my friends who know. I said, of course, he received guests unbeknownst to him. So my friends that came to the house that he didn't know, because I was a youth corps, of course, I'm going to bring friends to the house. But that's aside, But in the 9 months I was in my uncle's house, 9 months, he did not receive one. Well, actually, he received a visitor, one person twice. Late Justice Ogundare came from Benin, Court of Appeal in Benin. He came twice. Even my aunt, his wife, did not come from Ibadan to that house. Okay? So that was kind of sedentary life my uncle lived, in terms of in the morning, we'll leave the house together. They drop him, we'll get the Court of Appeal, we'll get down, he'll drop me at the Ministry of Justice, and I'll find my way home for 9 months. When I get home, it's either at his desk working or he's taking a nap, his siesta. We will have dinner together, we will do his gardening, go to bed. 9 months, that was all that man did. I can't live like that. So when I say to myself, be true, not everybody, I'm not saying all judges should be like that, but not everybody can be like that. But I know how perhaps some would say judges should conduct themselves, comport themselves, blah, blah, blah. No, I think my uncle, I don't think it was a bit too one spectrum, so to speak. But I'm just saying, still for me, I like to go out. I like to meet people. I like to interact, and so I don't think in terms of the thing I like to do, the people that get out there, what have you, that I'll be happy, if I've gone to the bench, So again, to myself be true. So I wish to that was not, that was not for me, so to speak. But I salute those judges, justices that are on the bench. It's not easy. And finally, this my uncle. I think he died in 1994. And I think he made it to the Supreme Court. 3 years. They sat, they rose, he stood up, collapsed, and that was it. He died on the court. He had high blood pressure. So, no, I'm not interested.
Understood. So before I go on to my last question, which is really a wrap-up, I want to do a bit of a wrap-up myself, and I hope that the audience has gotten as much out of this session as I have, because I took notes. And you've told us things like, your formula for success: integrity, hard work, dependability, loyalty within legal boundaries, being willing to be mentored and mentoring others when you've risen up through the profession. You also said some of the last few things you said about keeping your feet on the ground. I think that really resonated with me, and not believing your own hype as well. That is definitely going to stay with me. So that leads me to my final question, which is last words for the SBL community and for young lawyers coming up in the profession. What should we take away with us in addition to all you've already given us?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add. For the young lawyers, I just want to say that, it's not easy, and it's, it sounds like a cliche, maybe it is, but it's just the truth. It's very simple. Some of the most simple things and are the most difficult to do, at least do consistently, but you have to. So since we're talking about law practice, my advice to young lawyers will be always try to be the best lawyer you can be. I mean, try not to say, oh, this is good enough and let it go. Even if you know you can do better, always try. It's not easy. Always try to be the best. And it's very frustrating, but always try to be the best. Because for me, I would hate to imagine, particularly as a young lawyer, that I do something and then I get called into the office of the partner. If the partner yells and screams, I wouldn't appreciate it. It would be kind of, hurtful. But if the partner was just say, Seni, I read your memo, that was disappointing. I don't think you were paying attention. You didn't, your research was not up to snuff. And as a matter of fact, contrary to, the position you took, I'm aware of this authority that goes directly, against the position you're taking. And I don't think that's something that we can send out to our client or something. At that point, first of all, someone like me, I'm sure I'll be devastated. Even if the guy says later on that's okay, this, you will always try to make it up. Then, and I even think maybe I start looking for another job because you basically, you messed up big time. But if it is that, and if it, particularly if it's that because you were not thorough, you rushed it or whatever it is, But if, you've done everything humanly possible, it's not likely something like that would happen. And if it were to happen, you can listen, you can take your lumps and go, but you can then come back and say, sir, oh man, this, this is what I did, this is where I looked, this is what I found. When the person sees the level of industry that went into it, they will understand. And because, yeah, things happen, So you have to really try to be the best lawyer you can be. You can't, and then the one that drives me, that really irritates me the most is when you see juniors and they bring work to you and their work is very inconsistent. So if you're just bad, then I know that, we have to work on you and you're bad. But if it's inconsistent, I know you're not giving your best. Sometimes and then I can't trust you because I don't know what, which Shaney is going to show up tomorrow. Is it the Shaney that's going to be top notch? And how can I trust you with my clients? So for to juniors, you have to just be the best lawyer you can be. You have to. I even tell my own juniors, you can't bring something to me, and you haven't even used micro word spell check. That one is free now. It's on the thing now, and it will give you the red or the blue, so you can check it. So what you have, even if you bring it to me and I say there are too many, another thing that's a pet peeve of mine. You write a paragraph, and you have like 12 sentences. 12 sentences. So you write something and you have maybe you go more than 6 lines for a paragraph, or you have like 12 sentences, too many. Every thought, you take it, you finish. Next one, you take it, you finish. So if it is mumble jumbled or you haven't proofread and it's clear because you didn't even do a spell check. Those little things, they're not so little. Because if you are general counsel of a company and the answer is right, it's spot on, the conclusion is right, the cases are correct, but the first paragraph, you see typos, what are you going to think?
You will lose confidence in the quality of work even before you get to the end.
Yeah. You lose confidence. So there's no, I tell my own people that legal work is not easy work because you have to get it right. I mean, right within the context of what it is you're doing. There may not be a slam dunk right answer or wrong answer, but at least the person will see your thinking, your perspective, and then they cannot make a judgment. So for another thing, since I'm a litigator, you write a brief and you just cite cases. Those cases are on point and you are saying everything. And I'm reading this thing and I'm loving it. Then I come and say, wow, let's look at this thing. Why don't you quote verbatim the thing and indent it so that even the judge can see that, yes, this is it? Because why should the judge trust what you've written, that this person is not just take the time to write it verbatim, put it in quotation marks, and indent so that it stands out. That's how you win cases, or your brief speaks for you when you're not there. But some people, it's like too much more, but no, it's not. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
So as far as party was SBL, what can I say? Like I said, SBL has continued to go from strength to strength. And, I know I speak certainly for myself, but whether it's Mr. Tomi, whether it's Mr. Kade Johnson, SAN, Mr. Gudalo, Mr. Oyebode, of course, Uluakwata, and of course, my very good friend and classmate, Mr. Yuli Jemide, who succeeded me, and we all are always available, as you know, Zofu. And you are the incoming, as they say. Incoming. So, so you're asking all this, you want crunch so that you know how to take off, but we have no doubt that, you're going to do outstanding work when you take over the helm from Dr. Adefudu. But again, it's just for SBL to remain dynamic, and we still have a lot of work to do in law reform. There's still a lot to do in that space, and to continue to be a leader among the sections. That would be my parting words to the SBL.
Thank you so much, Silk. I'm going to draw your attention to the Q&A, because I don't think we have enough time to go through what's left, but there's I think some words of commendation from Shola Dosumu, but there are two questions. One about mentoring. I think you've touched on that, so hopefully that has been responded to. But maybe if you want to just type in a few words there. And there was some other question again on healthcare. I think you really hit a nerve with this healthcare law, and the person wanted to know how they can go about specializing in that, because it's not a course that's taught in our institutions. But I think I would encourage you to just take a look at that and maybe see if you could type in a few words, because I will go on to invite the chair of the SBL, Dr. Adeoye Adefulu, to see if he has a question or comments before we move to wrap up. Chair, are you on?
Thank you, Ozofu, and thank you to my chair, Mr. Seni Adio, SAN. It's
before Doc speaks, Chairman, let me also do this. Yeah, let me also do this. Because I just happen to see the number of people who are on the platform and what have you. I too want to thank everybody for joining, for listening, because it's a two-way thing. If you didn't take the time, and look, today's the 21st, it's very close to the holidays. I'm sure you have a lot of things to do, shopping, last-minute work. So if you didn't join, and I'm speaking to myself, So I thank you for joining, for thinking that we'd have something useful to say. Because again, who am I? I mean, I could not have taken it for granted that anybody would be interested, because, it's not impossible that some will say, what's he going to say that we haven't heard before, or what have you, So if I didn't have an audience, so you all have made my Christmas, honestly, for tuning in. It shows you how old I am for tuning in. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you so much, Chair. I mean, it was a fantastic session. Thank you for using stories of your life. Actually, I would say lives, because you've lived many lives. Weaving in all these stories of your lives and sharing your experiences and principles that guide your practice. We've taken several notes. You've talked to us about new growing areas of law, and it's certainly an area of focus for us. And I know that just before we had this session, where I was trying to put together or think through Business Law Weekly for early part of next year, and there's a block that we've set aside emerging areas of practice. Clearly, healthcare law has struck a nerve here, so perhaps it's one of those emerging areas of practice that we should be talking about in the Business Law Weekly. You also talked to us about communication. I think that is such an important area that cannot be overemphasized. Communication in written form, communication verbally, giving presentations, etc. And, for the training committee of the Nigerian Bar Association section of Business Law, it's something that I am going to task them with over the course of next year to make sure that we develop courses that help our lawyers communicate better. I think many people think that we, as lawyers, we are great communicators, but I tend to think that we've been hampered by the fact that we've communicated basically with ourselves and our communication style, the verbosity of communication style, etc. I think the experience of working with business people, it tells you that they want something in a simple manner, but as effective a manner as possible. So we'll be focusing a lot on that in the upcoming year. So I'd like to thank you for that, Mr. Adio. And as you were mentored by others, you were my mentor, who brought me into the section as secretary of the council. And again, I thank you for that opportunity and that experience. And I want to join him in thanking the members of the audience. I am so grateful that we have 95 attendees on the 21st, is it the 20th or the 21st of December? I mean, it is amazing. And you have stayed with us from the beginning of the year through to date. Thank you for that. For those of your colleagues that were not able to join, this and every other session of the Business Law Weekly is on our website. So please direct them to the website so that they can take advantage of this discussion. I want to also commend you for your support for the SBL and look forward to lots of activities that we have in store for you over the course of 2024. So I wish you a very Merry Christmas and season's greetings and a prosperous and a happy New Year. So Ozofo, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to stand on those thanks, but add mine to our Leonard Silk. Thank you so much for everything you shared. I gained a lot, and I know the audience did. Thank you for taking the time. I wish you a Merry Christmas and a very, very successful 2024.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
So I'll be talking to you later and also to Doc.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Endurance, we're done.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Very fantastic presentation from our boss. God bless you, sir.
All right, too. Bye-bye.
Dr. Seni Adio, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Bye.